Just to kick things off, keeping it general, in your opinion, what will be the lasting legacy from this coronavirus pandemic, from a business point of view?
I've personally have had a lot of lessons learned in terms of my leadership, the way I look at what really matters, the way I define goals, the way we actually stress, manage, and roll out culture and cultural values in the workplace. On a personal front, and I can be very open. I was one of the people that got COVID, and my entire family got COVID 2 months ago, and I was one of them. Um, and it was very simple. My dad kind of fell and broke his hip, and the doctor treating him, he had COVID. He didn't know. My dad got it, and the entire household got it, and me taking care of my dad, it was really natural to get it. And I have seen firsthand the past few months how many families have been impacted, and not many families have been blessed to maybe survive, or some members of the family survives. I mean, I can tell you, I've had friends and cousins where they've lost people, and more than one person in the same household. That fundamentally changes your entire kind of outlook and psychology about what you consider a priority in your life. Um, on a personal front, I am back to the basics when it comes to values and what's really important. And I can also say humility has become a lot more mainstream in the way I think, how content I am with things. And I'm just a lot more, a more kind of balanced and humble person.
Good. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you've made a full recovery. So that's good. Tell me though, in terms of the you saying you've had COVID, how does that shape the way you lead going forward?
Well, before I got COVID, um, it was about really resetting um, your expectations of the leader and manage with a lot more empathy. So you really think about it, and we'll talk about the four important things that I personally believe leaders need to embrace in managing and invigorating and keeping a workforce going in the conditions that have become more mainstream.
Yeah.
The very first one is about the way you listen to your people. um, and it's not about hi, how are you, and tell me what's going on, because different people internalize challenge and calamity differently. So there's a whole different set of listening skills that you as a manager and as a leader need to really employ, that is not really looking to the surface but actually looking to the signs of exhaustion, fatigue. And specifically, if you're in tune with your own leaders and your own people, you need to be able to see when things are off. The other area there is the focus on care and well-being. So this has been one of the areas that we've jumped on very early, looking at understanding that people right now, they do go through withdrawal after a prolongated period of working from home. That camaraderie, that break that they can take maybe from their kids or their household chores, that's not there. So there's this constant thing that they have to deal with. The boundaries between personal and professional, gets really blurry. So what we did is we went back to the basics with things like rolling out yoga, instructors in different time zones, and rolling out, physical instructors, physical education instructors, and, things like Zumba, or reminding people back to use the EAP program, the employee assistance programs. Every company, every modern company has them, but very little employees actually take advantage. People need to talk, people need to really remain sane. Having things like no meeting days, shortening meeting times, making sure that there's breaks between, meetings, redefining goals, to be not these annual lofty goals, but these kind of short-term, periodic, quarterly goals where people can continue to feel a sense of accomplishment. So there's been a rewiring of the entire kind of operating environment, and this sense of care and sense of, well-being, and basically rolling out things like virtual happy hours, creating calls where it's not about the numbers, it's not about the business, it's not about the performance, but it's about the cross-functional, learning from people of different time zones and different countries and different, cultures, how they're really coping, the stories they're hearing, what they really know they've done that they know really works. So in weaving all of that into your culture, weaving all of that in the way you lead, creates incredible amount of humanity in the environment. And in fact, it will get employees to obviously feel a lot more comfortable, and it will actually make them want to stay because they really know that they're not just a bunch of numbers, they're really people. And the other area that's really, really important is, so we've done all of that, before I got COVID. And after I got COVID, one of the real important things I've done is really allowed myself to be very vulnerable with my team. I wanted my people to see that I'm a human being, and that I do suffer, and then I did get it. And I had to kind of walk through, what I've gone through, the things that I was told, the regimens I followed, and give them, like this virtual kind of video updates or SMS and WhatsApp updates, so people know that, hey, even leaders, they're susceptible, and we're all humans. That this thing doesn't really know class or
No.
know, people in different positions. Everybody's vulnerable.
Okay, back to the workforce. I'm fascinated by this, so please stop me if I'm going on about it. But I understand digital transformation, but explain to me about workforce transformation.
To me, if you really take a look at a pre-COVID definition of workforce transformation, I would say that it's about the ability to connect, people, to other people, to applications, to content, to data, regardless of where they are and regardless of the device they're using. Think about 20 years ago, and you and me have probably been IT users for that long, if not more. What was work? How would we have defined work? Work, if you have kids, they ask you in the morning, hey, daddy, where are you going? You say, I'm going to work. But if you really pick up the dictionary and you take a look at the definition of work, work is something you do, it's not a place you go. But for 2 decades, we basically had to come, or even more than 2 decades, we had to kind of get up in the morning, maybe make our sandwich, hop in the car, have to go to a specific location, to be on a specific machine, plugged into a specific network, within all the controls of, and the boundaries that the organization has defined, for us to be productive, to get access to the things, to the data, the applications, to the people, so we can create value for that company and for the economy, correct? So workforce transformation, we've seen much philosophy on that topic as mobility. We've seen the 3G, the 4G, now the 5G, the smartphones, correct? The laptops, the hotspots, all of that has fundamentally created this freedom for people to dissolve location and speed of access, or internet speed, as barriers to, or hurdles to doing good work. And now you can really fundamentally do work from anywhere. If you now take workforce transformation, put it in the context of COVID-19, it specifically talks about one extreme case where everybody's working from home. Okay. And that not only has, very huge technological implications, because organizations did not really build infrastructures for people to work from home. They didn't design, their communication fabrics and their network fabrics and their technology fabrics to do that. So obviously that has massive implications. We'll talk about that in a second. But more importantly, there is a big HR, and human and leadership aspects of that. Because traditionally, when people, if you've ever managed people, Gavin, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if one of your employees came and said, hey, look, can I work from home today? Your entire interpretation as a manager is, oh, this guy wants to slack for the day because no one works from home, correct? So we got caught overnight with the COVID-19 and this kind of crisis. Our mentality didn't change overnight. So the fact that I'm a manager of 10, 20, 30, 500 people in my case, all of these people are working from home. If I'm still thinking with the traditional mindset, I'm thinking, hey, my team is just sitting at home and they're slacking, correct? So obviously there has to be a going back to the basics in terms of how do we really now manage, workforce transformation in the context of COVID and any future crises that may really shift what we're really used to and how we've built our policies and systems and technologies, to be able to enable those people.
I love how you've mentioned a few times during the course of the interview so far, you've talked about going back to basics. And I think for a company like yourselves that thrives in the digital world, it's almost it's like a contradiction in terms almost. It sounds that way, but I suppose is that exactly what COVID has done to the world, that it is a case of, no matter how digitalized the world gets, we still have to remember that the basic skills learned will still carry on.
And that's exactly the point I want to make. We used to thrive by, the speed by which we deploy technologies or the change that we really make to adding flexibility or adding computing ability or adding, freedom of access and freedom of compute and all of that. And in my opinion, we are at a stage right now where leaders of organizations, they have to fundamentally be balanced. They have to drive, not only the change in terms of adopting new things and new paradigms, but they have to really also focus on the people aspect of that. And that's not been given a lot of attention and thought. And I'm not sure that we have many leaders in the industry today that have been probably prepared to navigate through how do we really listen to our people? How do we roll out new operating paradigms that suit today's world, that can cater to people and allow them to be productive? How do we really, focus on creating a culture of care, a working environment of care? And by the way, redefining the working environment is not, around campuses and offices, but an employee is an employee regardless of where they are, and their value to the organization, in fact, is higher. Because if you really think about some industries like ours, we have $2.3 million jobs shortage. Our cyber security, market is in dire need of new people that aren't available in the market. We have to create those through better public-private partnerships with universities and stuff like that. So from that perspective, you need to retain the people, so going back to the basics on the human leadership, side is more important, in my opinion, than just driving the technology transformation agenda in the company.
We will talk about digital transformation, I promise. Like I said, this fascinates me. The age-old question with technology, as soon as technology is mentioned in terms of the workplace, people think that jobs will be lost. Is technology a friend or a foe?
Look, at the end of the day, if you're thinking from a legacy mindset, we've seen over the years how certain technology revolutions have maybe eliminated certain jobs. But to me, that's not the measure, because the same technology that eliminated something that was done in a manual fashion has actually opened up the opportunity for a lot of new jobs that require higher skill sets. So maybe the mundane tasks, we've seen a reduction in that, but the one area technology cannot really displace is the human intelligence. Remember, do we create technology or does technology create us? It's the human that's superior. So we've seen how technology revolution, I wouldn't say eliminated, but it created displacement, you know, of eliminating lower level jobs, creating a lot more higher level, jobs that require, a different level of expertise. So from that perspective, maybe I am, I have this bias, a professional bias, but I do believe technology in many ways, it's a friend. Back to my earlier point, we are now starting to see, like, imagine without technology, what would have happened in this crisis? We've seen many sectors during COVID-19 thrive. We're one of them, but we're not the only one. Many organizations have thrived. Early innovations, fast decision making, retuning supply chains, finding new delivery models, changing business models, all happening on the fly. So we are capable. But so technology from that perspective kept the world going. I mean, can you imagine if you couldn't get medicine or you couldn't get food because you had to stay home? I mean, obviously, so technology is a friend. But because of too much technology has its own, impact on society. You take a look at the kids now that are just hooked to their phones or the iPads. Take a look at people going through withdrawal and depression and grief. Now that we are entering this period of disillusionment, we all had these heroic responses at the beginning of COVID. Okay, and a year later, with the second wave of COVID right now, despite all the positive things that we're seeing in terms of vaccine and people say, hey, the light is at the end of the tunnel, but this kind of second wave of COVID has really anchored in people's minds, Gavin, that the problem isn't going to really go tomorrow. And from that perspective, we're seeing grief and depression and withdrawal, absenteeism. So yeah, technology is there and can enable that. But if you really don't manage the other side, don't manage the human aspect and the people aspect, then you will not really get the effective results you want.
What can we expect going forward then?
Look, what we can really expect for sure, and I know this like I know my name, is that the world that we've come from is gone. And as we were talking and I gave you an analogy, if I am basically used to doing something, let's say I have two cars and I have, one of my red car is my favorite car. And for whatever reason, it broke down. If it needs one day, 1 week, 2 weeks, for it to be fixed, I may, when it comes back, redevelop that preference and just continue to use it, as if I didn't stop using it. The prolongated impact of the change that we've gone through at a professional and personal level, and the outlook that this environment isn't going to change anytime soon, fundamentally creates new ways, new preferences, and from that perspective, the only thing I can tell you is if there are leaders and there are people that really think, hey, can't really wait for COVID-19 to be behind us so I can go back and do this and that, depending on what this and that could be just simply a pipe dream. It's about, embracing a new world and redefining, our value sets, and redefining, our relevance, and how we can extract value and how we can really provide value on a personal and professional level in this new environment.
Cherif, that has been absolutely fantastic. It's been such an insight talking to you.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Thank you.